I feel like it might be more about reframing or adopting a more moderate stance on some things. But I'm kind of not answering the question.
I was gonna say you just avoided. You are a politician and avoided the damn question here, Tim.
Brad Shuck, welcome to Behavioral Groove's Groove Jams.
I'm so excited to be here, guys. I cannot wait to have this conversation with you. It's going to be amazing.
You were on the list of top people we wanted to have for our Groove Jams. So
List. Yep.
we are very excited to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing.
Tee it up, Kurt. Where are we going today?
So as we've talked about with you, Brad, Groove Jams is really, we're asking an interesting question and we're going to just jam on it. So the interesting question today is, if you could remove one vice from your life, what would that vice be?
That's a hard question. That's a deep question.
It's only one. Because I know for myself, I would be removing, I got this vice and this vice and this vice and this vice. And then, but no, we're limiting to one.
So something comes to mind for me. And that is giving. So I don't give myself permission very often. And I'm going to call that a vice because it prohibits so much stuff in my life. Like, it gets in the way. And I discovered this, taking a nap on a Sunday afternoon. Like, have you ever laying down to take a nap and your brain continues to go and you just kind of continue to think and you haven't given yourself permission to do that? And so the nap sucks. Like, it's terrible. Like, you get no rest, but you waste a bunch of time, like looking at the clock, like, I got 30 more minutes. I got 15 minutes. If I could just close my eyes for a little bit. And I find that there's a lot of areas of my life where I just don't give myself permission. And as a result of that, like, I'm not as efficient or productive or whatever. I don't rest well or eat well, whatever that might be.
So what besides taking a nap would you give yourself that you don't give yourself permission for?
So
Let me understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it's just disconnecting. Like, I don't give myself permission to disconnect. So we went on vacation a couple of summers ago, and I told my wife, like, I'm not going to work. I'm going to disconnect. And I didn't give myself permission to do that. So I said the words, but I didn't actually give myself permission to do that. And then to put in like guardrails that would allow me to do that thing. And in other areas of my life, it might be, I'm trying to eat healthier these days. I'll be 45 this November. So like, my body doesn't recover from tacos as well as it did in my 20s. And so every now and then I like to splurge. I like to get that taco or that burrito. And I don't give myself permission. I don't enjoy it. I feel guilty afterwards. I'm worried about it. I've got to get to the gym now. And so I think giving myself permission sometimes holds me back from really enjoying the good things in life.
But it's not just indulgences. It doesn't sound like you're holding yourself back and you want to give yourself permission to indulge, right? I mean, it sounds like just disconnecting.
Yeah.
There's no indulgence there. It's actually sort of a general well-being kind of thing.
Totally. Absolutely. Maybe you guys have instances in your life where that sense of just the disconnect, or maybe it's giving myself to be even present. Like, I'm going to be present with this person. Like, I'm not going to check my phone, or I'm not going to double book my meeting, or I'm not going to do this, but I'm just going to give myself permission to just be in this space for a little bit. And I find in my life, and then also in my work with leaders recently, they have got to give their teams permission to go in. Like, I talk to teams all the time and they feel a little held back from being able to go do what they need to do. Like, they have to check in, and there's concern about this. And as a result of that, they don't execute. And I find the same principle to apply in my own life.
So Brad, in one of our other conversations, and I'm going to misquote this, but you talked about giving yourself some grace. And what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, is there's almost this element of giving yourself a little bit of grace around. I had some I want to enjoy these tacos. Give yourself some grace to allow yourself to have some, freaking tacos, right?
Yeah.
It's like, don't feel guilty about it. It's okay to take a nap on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Give yourself some grace for that and allow that to just be, as opposed to, oh yeah, I'm thinking about this, and oh yeah, all these other things I could be doing, and all of that. Is that
It's
like,
it's absolutely true. And I've found that is a mechanism that I use to overcome that vice. And maybe the vice is judgment, like judgment on me. Like I'm judging, like, is this really what I should be doing right now? Like, or should I be doing something more productive? And I feel like sometimes I'm in a place in my own life where it's never enough. Like there's always the next thing to do. Like there's always something, like I should be cutting my grass right now while simultaneously writing a paper and also teaching a class. But
talking to us at Behavior Brews and all at the same time?
yeah, and eating tacos, like all things at the same time, right? And so there isn't like this bifurcation that I've got in my life, but rather I'm trying to do maybe too much all at the same time. And so there's a judgment on that.
Well, what in your mind is a vice? You used early
Mhm.
in this conversation, you used the word prohibit, something that would prohibit you. And we've talked a little bit about indulgence as well. How would you define a vice?
Mm.
What does it mean to you?
So to me, that's a good question. It's totally off the top of my head. To me, a vice is something that holds you back in some way, that it's perhaps not negative, but it is something that prohibits you from doing something else. It may get in the way. It may be a hurdle or a bump or a hill in the journey, if you will. And it's something that a vice, yeah, I think a vice keeps me from doing things. I think about like, I might say I really like, I live in Kentucky, so bourbon is free flowing in the state. So we have a normal tap like in our house that's got water. Then we've got one that's got bourbon in it, and that's just comes from the city. And so, too much of that can get in the way. It can be a vice. Maybe maybe a vice could be I over exercise, like I don't give myself rest days or whatever. But there's this sense of it doesn't allow me to maximize the benefit that I could be if that wasn't present in my life.
I think it's really interesting because the idea of exercising and over exercising as a vice isn't one that I would normally think of as vices. I think of them typically as being negative, but there is a point where what is good can actually turn into a negative aspect of that. Mr. Houlihan, if you had to answer this question, remove a vice from your life, what would that vice be for you?
This is really hard because I have, much like Brad's idea of vice sort of getting in the way of something, I've thought of vices as being the ultimate inhibitors, the ultimate blockade, right? Not just a bump, but a separator, something that really keeps me from living my life. And I feel like I live a life of, to some degree, some kind of moderation. Getting a full pan of me you might disagree, but to a large degree, I don't feel like I have any of those blockades. I don't have one thing that is standing in my way of living. But to use Brad's definition, so that's what comes to my mind in my definition. But when I use Brad's definition, I think about bumps in the road or too much bourbon, for instance, not just enjoying bourbon, but being at the tap all day, every day, day and night, glug, 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 glug. That's too much bourbon. And so I think that there are probably things that I could cut back on. And there are, and alcohol would be an indulgence that there are certainly times when I overindulge. But I didn't start drinking until I was 36 years old. And I don't have a sense of I'm falling into the it's going to block my view on the world. It's going to literally inhibit my interaction in the world.
Mm.
So I feel like it might be more about reframing or adopting a more moderate stance on some things. But I'm kind of not answering the question.
I was gonna say you just avoided. You are a politician and avoided the damn question here, Tim.
Kurt, let's go to you. Let's hear what you have to
It's like how you now are redirecting. I didn't answer the question, and I'm still not going to. I'm going to move it over to you.
I don't know. I'm sorry. And I don't mean to sound like I'm some kind of a petty pure shoes.
You are a saint, Mr. Houlihan.
No.
We'll let that go. All right. Well, so I take this in a whole different perspective. Advice for me isn't a world-stopping piece like you, Tim. I do think it's the bump in the roads, but it is for me. It's those things that it's the bad habits in my world.
Mm.
It's those pieces that I go, what just happened? I just spent 2 hours scrolling through my freaking free feed on my social media. Why did and I can tell you, like yesterday, coming back from Tim and I were just at a conference, podcasting conference. I spent literally all the time at the airport and on the plane looking through social media stuff that I'm like going, what value did that bring to my life? I don't remember 99% of it, and I could have been using that time in a different manner
Yep.
that would have been purposeful, that would have been intentional. And not saying that a vice, like scrolling through social media is negative, like you said, Brad. There's that element of, hey, a little bit is fine. I mean, there's an element of escapism with that. There's an element that allows me to say, okay, I can just go out there and find some fun political things or some social fun memes, and it allows my brain to rest and get recharged in a different way. But it's when it becomes that, oh, 3 hours have passed, 2 hours have passed, and
Yeah.
dang, I don't know where that time went.
Yeah. I've certainly experienced that myself. I mean, I have a 13-year-old, and we were often talking to her about the vice of social media and like doom scrolling, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, she can sit on her bed for hours and not move, and she's scrolling. And I like the definition that you've got there, that it's this it's this thing that becomes the thing in the moment. And there's certainly lots of that in my life as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do we differentiate that from just like being in flow? Like really being in a place where maybe our brains just need the nap. Maybe our brains just need to unconsciously do something else while we're modestly consciously involved in A when
Mm.
our brains are working on B.
I think about the nap for a second. Like, and it really all started with a Sunday afternoon nap. Like
That was the problem, huh?
it was a problem. And you guys know this. So I play the drums. And I play on.
Can I just say, you are a drummer. You're not just a guy that plays the drums. You're a drummer. You're legit. You're not a guy that plays a guitar. I'm a guitarist. You are a drummer, dude.
You're kind, man. I appreciate that. Well, after we play, like, I'm tired, right? And so sometimes I play Sunday mornings, and I would come home often, and then I would just try to take a nap. And if I did that every day, all day, right? Like, then it becomes a thing. Like, it becomes a vice. But in moderation, it's probably healthy, or it's a sense of restoration or well-being, or like taking a walk or whatever that might be. If I ate tacos all the time, probably not good. There is an element of happiness here for me that I'm thinking about. Like, do we give ourselves permission to be happy?
Yeah.
And in what ways do we deny ourselves the ability to be or feel happiness. Like sometimes scrolling, I don't know that I'm happy, but I'm kind of in flow. Like, oh, I'm just kind of doing my thing here. I'm killing a little time. It's fine. But I wonder if there's an element of happiness that's embedded in this idea.
There's an interesting piece that came to my mind from what you just said. It's this idea that, all right, limiting myself to no tacos, not good, but having tacos twice a day, every day, also not good.
Also,
There's this Goldilocks zone. And that Goldilocks zone is going to be different for exercise, tacos, naps, etc. But there is this piece that if we think about what we're talking about here, that scrolling for me, there is a Goldilocks zone that it's good. I don't necessarily have to go cold turkey on it. I don't have to say I'm cutting it out of my life entirely, but I also have to say after a certain point, it is no longer beneficial to my happiness, as you said. And you're right. I don't know if it's happiness, but just overall, maybe well-being. It's a release of me that I don't have to think about things and I can just, have some time for myself that isn't, I'm not processing or doing something. I don't always have to be productive, right? I don't want to be one of those people who is like maximizing every moment of my day. I think that is actually a vice in and of itself. So I think there's something there.
I struggle with that. That's hard for me. And I think it is, I think about, my own life journey. It's very difficult for me to give myself permission to say, I don't have to maximize every minute of the day, that I can give myself permission to scroll a little bit, or I can give myself permission to do something. And what I find is when my mind can't stop, and we've all had those moments. I had one this morning at 3:00 in the morning. I just woke up and like my mind is rolling, and I just got out of bed and I came upstairs and I banged out a presentation really quickly because that's what had to happen. But the idea of that getting in the way of some sense of well-being, flow, happiness for me is real. But I struggle deeply with giving myself permission to not maximize every single minute.
Where does that come? Where do you think that comes from?
That's a good, I don't know.
Not to be a psychologist here, but this is
maybe it's a sense of guilt, or this is, I mean, it may sound crazy. Like maybe it's shame. Like I don't, like what happens if somebody calls me on that, or what if I don't get that paper done, or what if I don't get that presentation just right? What if I don't want to be embarrassed, and so I can just work hard through it. I can't tell you how many times in my life, it's been like 10:45 at night, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm still trying to get through an email inbox. And if I would just pause and go to bed and then come back the next morning, I could probably knock it out twice as fast. But in my mind, I'm like, I got to plow through this really quickly. And so there's this sense of accomplishment, maybe that's the vice, is the sense of accomplishment. Like I got it done. As I've gotten older, that's gotten softer, and I've changed my tune on that a little bit, but it's still very present.
I think that that's interesting in and of itself, this idea that as you get older, it's changing. Kurt and I mentioned, we were just at a conference, and Ira Glass, the producer and founder of This American Life, spoke.
Yeah.
And he was answering a question about, sort of what's enough. And he said, in my life I'm in such a deep pool of self-doubt, there will never be enough success or enough accomplishment to get me out of it. And I thought, wow, that has driven him to do the work that he has done. In some ways, that actually has helped him find his groove. Like his self-doubt he has sort of leveraged that in a way that has propelled him forward.
But I think there's another aspect of that while it has propelled him forward in his career and in what he's achieved, has it led him to having the best life that he could have?
That's a
So there is always the self-doubt. There is always more I could do. There is always that other email I could answer before I go to bed. And does that serve you as an individual
good question.
in the best way? And sometimes, and again, there's no right or wrong answer for any individual. I think that's going to have to be a conversation you have with yourself to say, hey, this is really what I want to achieve. And in order to achieve it, I have to do these things. Okay, if that's really what's driving you and it's not put on you by society or your family or, your spouse or whoever else, but it's really true to who you are, then go for it. But if it's not, and that's my thing, is I think many times those achievement goals that we place on ourselves, we're not placing them on. We're making a misinformed interpretation of what others have put on us from our childhood, from our society, our culture, and everything else.
I love that. I mean, the self-doubt piece, like who listening doesn't have a little bit of that going on from time to time?
All the
right?
time. All the time. Yeah.
And that's a drive.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if there's any more that we can jam on this, but man, Brad, that you've just given me so much to think about.
I love
like
it.
I'm like going,
Yes.
oh, because I have the same waking up in the middle of the night going, oh, I gotta go punch out that, next presentation. Anyway.
Absolutely. That was my morning for sure.
Well, Brad, thanks for being a guest on Groove Jams today. We always enjoy our conversation with you.
Back at you guys. You're the best.